Alrighty, I'm going to call this meeting of the Bloomington Commission on Sustainability to order. We're going to start off with our roll call for attendance. So when I say your name, please unmute and give some indication that you are present, please. Anna Abernathy.
Here.
Cool. Jarrett Alexander is here. Christy.
Here.
Cool. Matt. Don't see Matt, but he might be a little bit late. Alicia.
Here.
Awesome. Nolan.
Here.
Cool. Jonna. Don't see her. Colin.
Here.
Cool. Shelby.
Here.
Awesome. Najla. Don't see Najla yet. And Joseph.
Here.
Awesome. Well, it is good to see everybody. I hope your days and weeks are going as well as can be hoped. So first up on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. So if anybody has any comments on the agenda about the order or something getting left off, if you want to raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Move that we approve the agenda as distributed.
All right, do I hear a second?
A second.
Awesome. And then we'll go through. Okay, Anna?
Yes.
All righty, Jarrett votes yes. Christy?
Yes.
Awesome. Alicia?
Yes.
Cool. Nolan?
Yes.
Colin?
Yes.
Shelby?
Yes.
And Joseph?
Yes.
Alrighty, the agenda is approved unanimously. We will now move into public comment. So if you're a member of the public, please raise your hand. I'll call on you and then you'll be given 3 minutes to speak. Don, are you wishing to speak?
Yes.
Alrighty, you can go ahead.
Oh, first of all, thank you all. Thank you for helping us out with the EC's 50th anniversary or birthday webinar or whatever you want to call it. My colleagues were quite happy. So we really thank you for your talk. Also, just in general, last week I sat in on a Reuters event related to climate mitigation and et cetera. And the takeaway that I had from the meeting, I think is very complimentary for the city of Bloomington, for the departments, for the various commissions that are contributing for climate mitigation and other environmental. It's the gist of the comments from the meeting. Bloomington, I think, as far as what we are doing in relation to climate, not just the planning, but actually what departments and the various volunteers that help the city. We are doing things that are akin to cities like London, Melbourne, Akron, and the international media. So I think that we are on the right track. Thank you.
Thank you. And seeing no other members of the public, we will move on from public comment into report from chair. So the first thing on my report actually relates to Don's comment a little bit. This past weekend, I and some others were on a panel celebrating the Environmental Commission's 50th anniversary. And as Lauren and I were talking about before the meeting started, I was planning on letting folks know that that was happening. but in my head, it was happening this coming weekend, and I was planning to let everyone know at this meeting. And by the time I realized the mistake, it was kind of too late to I didn't want to give everybody last minute notice, and then you feel obligated to try and come. So, but it did happen, and I believe the recording of it is on Facebook. If you're interested in watching it, it was a really interesting panel with a lot of really cool people. Cool. So then my next thing is, at the last meeting, we talked about getting John Zodi, the director of HAND, to come and speak with us. And I said that I would reach out with him. And he is very interested in meeting with the commission, and he actually is available at our next meeting in November. And so when we're formulating the agenda for that, he wants to have 15 to 20 minutes allotted for a presentation about the work that he's doing at HAND and what kind of their vision is there. And then more specifically, how it relates to the Housing First resolution that we passed back in February. And he's going to leave some time also for commissioners to ask questions. So I just wanted to let everyone know that he will be coming so that we can all formulate questions and know that he's coming and be aware of that. And then the third thing, several weeks, I think 2 weeks ago, Colin, Najla, and I presented at the city council meeting, their budgetary meeting, with the main goal was just to make sure that they were aware that the Housing First resolution had passed, and what it said. So we decided, kind of in consulting with Councilmember Flaherty, that it would be effective for us to just attend that meeting and read the resolution into the record, followed by some comments. So Colin and I read the resolution into the record during public comment on a specific part of the budget. And then Najla delivered some very powerful, in my opinion, remarks on kind of how the resolution tied into the budget that they were voting on. So that resolution, all the city council members are now aware of it, and many of them afterwards expressed appreciation. And so I just wanted to let everybody know that A, that happened, and B, that many members of the council were very appreciative for the resolution. Yeah, and Colin, if you want to say anything about that, I can cede you some time really quick too. And if Najla comes in, we can give her time.
I think you hit it on the nail on the head, Jarrett. I would say, just to add on to that from my memory, at least 2 different council members cited the remarks that we made and their decision on to abstain or to vote against the budget, if I don't recall incorrectly. So yeah, it seemed to have made a difference. It was great.
Yeah, I'll check it.
Hey, Don, would you be able to mute? I think
Oh,
we're
sorry.
having some background
I
noise.
did.
No worries. Okay, so then that is all I have for the report from Chair. So we can now move into the report from Economic and Sustainable Development with Lauren.
Yeah, so I have a couple of upcoming meetings I wanted to preview, especially since Matt is teaching a class at this point in time. So the first is that the final vote on the budget will occur tomorrow. So I don't know how long that deliberation will last, but it'll be part of a city council meeting. There are some implications if the budget is not voted for, in terms of what the normal process is that if it's approved, then, or if it's not approved, then it would revert to the previous year's budget. That has some pretty important implications for this year because of the federal American Rescue Plan funding. If it was a no vote from council, then it would revert back to last year's budget, and that money would not be available for the city to spend. So anyway, just to keep in mind that that's happening. That will also give me a lot more information to share with you next meeting in terms of what potential programs we are planning to do next year, because I'll have a better idea about what our financial situation is. also related to council, that next following week, the 20th, during the mayor's report, I will be giving an update to city council on climate and sustainability progress. That would typically happen at least once a year, but with COVID, my time in front of them has been focused on getting the climate action plan and the climate vulnerability assessment on the record. So my intention was for the next meeting, the November meeting, to provide at least a brief presentation of what I presented, and I'll send it prior to that meeting so that if you guys have specific questions about that, about what are the current city initiatives, what might be future city initiatives for next year, then I can answer those in a more concrete fashion, especially since we'll have hopefully John here to speak on Hand's behalf next meeting, so it will probably be pretty full. Trying to think if there's anything else of particular relevance. Probably just those main two things in terms of what's happening. We'll be closing out the year and looking at any additional revenue or resources available for any last minute, perhaps grant funding, but I'll keep you updated on that. So yeah, those meeting dates were tomorrow and then the next following Wednesday. And then I will probably attend the Just Transition Working Group once I find out if we've settled on the 2nd. But I think that's all that I had. If anyone had any questions that I could answer for you. Joseph?
Yes, thank you. I would just like to ask if you have any information on the current amount of progress, according to the best of your understanding, on overall climate action plan implementation so far since it's been approved.
Sure. It's a little bit of a tricky question to answer offhand because a lot of the goals will need to continue to be worked on. So for instance, we've made progress in certain areas and we've slid back in others. So I've been working with Google Environmental Insights Explorer to try to get some more dynamic carbon emission modeling of the last year, because instead of doing a full inventory, if we can just get things like transportation data, it's easier to tell what the impact of the pandemic has been on emissions. From that, basically we can tell that transportation related emissions dropped 20% last year in Bloomington. However, it's unclear how much of that will retain at a lower level. So even with, many students not living here and all these other mitigating factors, that was what the drop was. For Monroe County on a whole, it was a 23% drop. So there are a variety of different focuses that I feel like the city has. And again, that's partially going to be dependent on how funding decisions fall. But a couple of areas that I feel like last year we did particularly well on were completing alternative transportation projects ahead of schedule because there were fewer people on the road. So some engineering construction projects were able to finish sooner. There were Recover Forward investments on things like bus stop improvements to try to improve the physical infrastructure around riding transit. We have since 2019, Bloomington Transit went from 0 fully electric buses to getting grants to now having 10. 2 have arrived and then 8 are either on order or to be ordered with federal funding. So there's been quite a few, I would say, structurally significant changes. Another big project that I think will have a big impact on city operations emissions is Dillman modernization project. So the wastewater plant is the highest user of electricity in Monroe County. And by that $23 million modernization project, they'll be able to at least decrease that by 15%. So that's not a super succinct way, because I would say that some goals in the climate action plan are sequenced. So like, for instance, if there is, no one's probably going to correct me on Tillman, but some of them are sequenced. So for instance, like if we end up finding out we got rescue plan funding, then we can do more outreach about a potential program for commercial composting. So I'll have more information on whether we can start doing outreach on those after the budget passes. Noan, please correct me.
No, I was going to add, we also did a project in 2019, 2020 at Dillman with our process air system. And I don't have a kilowatt number, but we're saving about $140,000 a year from that. So this new project will add to that quite a bit. I also wanted to ask, could you remind me what the Google Analytics software you're using is?
Yeah, so it's a new Google product, and they reached out. Basically, Google has been able to aggregate data that people have voluntarily shared from their Android phones. You can always change that in your Google settings, but basically anyone that's been traveling around Bloomington and sharing their location data, they can tell where the inboundary and outboundary trips are. It's pretty hard to do transportation emissions normally because we just get some sort of traffic count from the state. So that provides a little bit more dynamic modeling over time, because it'll show it's from 2018, so we have 2018, 2019, 2020, and I can show that in our next meeting as well. So I've requested that be publicly shared because they wanted someone to look at it first and decide whether there were any problems with the basic data that needed to be fixed before it goes live. But I'll put the link to the general platform on there. It won't show Bloomington, Monroe County yet because I've asked that they try to make it public by the 20th, and I don't know if they're going to be able to turn around and fulfill that. But in the meantime, you can type in any city and it will show basically what their general emissions trends are, which is nice because many places, I mean, I think Monroe County is one example, don't have the necessary support to do emissions modeling. I would argue that in order for us to do it accurately, it's helpful to have a third party to do it as well. So, yep. I don't see Matt having joined. He said he may, I don't know. We'll see if he ends up showing up, but we can move to the next part of the agenda unless there are any other questions for me.
Alrighty, we will be moving on then. And yeah, like Lauren said, we'll skip past report from council and we can always bounce back to it if Matt does sneak in. Next up is old business. So the first thing is city resources for residents.
I can provide an update about that. So I met with someone in the mayor's office this morning about our website, and that's like one of the main reasons I think that people have trouble finding some of these resources. So right now, if you go to top services, it will come down with like quite a variety of different pieces of information for residents. The next step is, I think, to use the list that Joseph spent a lot of time helping put together and making sure that it's easier for people to find those. And then we can link that particular list back to the sustainability page. So it will be self-referencing. And that will help people more easily find different programs that are across departments. Because right now, if you don't know that, for instance, the neighborhood cleanup is being offered by Housing and Neighborhood Development, it would be really hard for you to find that as a resident.
Awesome. Does anybody have any questions or comments about that? Alrighty, seeing none, we will move to the next part of old business, which is the Environmental Justice Solutions proposal, which came out of the Just Transition Working Group. So tonight we're hoping to have a discussion and then a vote on that proposal that we looked at last meeting, but ultimately decided to postpone until this meeting. So Colin, if you would want to take the lead on this.
Sure, I'm happy to. Thanks, Jared. So I wanted to provide an update on some correspondence that we had with the consultant. Fortunately, we did hear back about their availability. They say that their schedules are fairly flexible and open going into February and March 2022, which is a sort of tentative ballpark range for hosting this meeting or meetings. And they were interested in getting a little bit more clarity on what we're looking for with regards to sort of an interactive activity, interactive component to help with our racial equity implementation with our climate action plan. And so they were hoping to do a Zoom call in the coming weeks to discuss that. I'm hoping that that's going to be pro bono because due to budgeting constraints. And we heard just earlier today that the principal of the consultant, Maribel, she had proposed or has proposed as of just a few hours ago to do 2 different sessions that are an hour long. One session being a kind of a presentation on the REA and maybe a discussion about that. And then the second session, presumably another day, would be this sort of interactive activity. And she had proposed sort of having 1 hour prep time for both. That would bring the total that they're proposing to about that, like, I think it's $2,000-ish. So 4 hours total of their time. And I know that's double what we had originally envisioned. So yeah, I was thinking, maybe that might not be amenable to the commission, but we can certainly have a discussion about that. So that does it for the updates from the consultant. I wanted to briefly go over updates to the resolution with you all. One more here while I share my screen. Could you enable for me, Lauren? Thanks a million. All right. So just a few minor tweaks to the resolution. So here essentially, I had put in the sort of option for the budget, so the compensation. I was hoping to advocate for option 2, which is the 2 hours total for the consultant. But I'm hoping we can sort of just discuss that today and see if, okay, is that fine? Or do we want to go with option 3, which I included, which is Maribel's last minute proposal that came up today. So we can, talk about the merits of either and then decide. And then other changes. So per Christie's feedback and sort of general feedback from last meeting, I included here sort of that, one of our objectives is going to be to explore sort of tangible actions and material gains that we could sort of pull off, ideally pull off in collaboration with City Council from this project. So from this series of meetings or from this one meeting, depending on how we structure it. And so I was thinking, that the working group, if we were to approve this resolution, the working group that's responsible for executing it and working with the consultant and the stakeholders, that they can kind of maybe brainstorm in further detail potential tangible actions and material gains that we might be able to pull off. And also, I think having a conversation with the consultant, since they're so experienced, will give us more insight, and it will help us to, I think, brainstorm like what could potentially come out of this that could be, really like materially beneficial. I see Najla.
Hi, thank you. Does the third star point, tangible actions and or material gains, does that include policy recommendations?
I would say yes. I think the policy recommendations were kind of already built into this proposal. Like, I feel like we for sure want to come out of this with policy recommendations for council. What I think there was interest, the word that was used last time I think was tangible. So like what, I feel like maybe there's energy around getting a little bit more specific, like what could, like how can we leverage this to help our implementation in sort of very concrete ways, with the Bloomington Climate Action Plan. So, but correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to speak for anyone else. If anyone else who had that,
I was just wondering if policy recommendations is included, or if it, or maybe it needs to be, or should it be or do you think maybe we should consider listing it explicitly in there?
Yeah, I mean, I think we might as well. I feel like that was sort of already
Tangible actions, policy, or material gains, or policy recommendations.
Yeah, I mean, we could just write in as an objective, devise a set of policy recommendations for council. I mean, that would be one set of arguably a tangible product from this. But I'm interested
Oh,
what
I
other
see.
commissions.
I see. So it's already implied. Okay.
I think so.
I just wanted to check. Okay.
But what
I
do
just
other
wanted to see what
commissioners-
your understanding was. Perfect.
It sounds like the question is what's the tangible action that this committee wants to see the most from these from hiring these people? Is a list of policy recommendations enough, or do we need more than that?
And
Right.
sort of,
Yeah.
exactly, Alicia. Yeah, and part of my response to that is I don't think we necessarily know yet. I think we, having a conversation with them will help us to kind of explore and build that out a bit more. But yeah, any thoughts from commissioners on this particular, on the question of tangible products? Shelby.
All right, well, it wasn't on tangible products. So I was trying to figure out how to raise my hand before you asked that last portion. So we can come back to my question after we've kind of closed out your current question.
Okay, sounds good. Joseph.
Yeah, thank you for fielding the question. I did want to note, I was the one who originally brought up last time that I probably was the one who even used the word tangible results. And that's one thing that I still have in mind, even if it's not tangible. One of the hesitations I have with approving this or giving it further consideration is what the overall benefit or takeaway will be, tangible or not, but essentially what will this do to, actually implement or further our implementation of the climate action plan.
All right, yeah, thank you for that. I mean, I don't believe that the city of Bloomington passed such a comprehensive report, on racial equity analyses in the community, in addition to their climate action plan. So part of this hinges on my feeling that there are just in that 90-page report and in that whole process that went into the sort of whole community engagement process that went into creating the climate action plan and that went into sort of drafting that report, that there are inevitably going to be things that we can take away from that and apply in our setting here in Bloomington. So that's kind of part of the inspiration for this, and I feel like we could take that back and maybe, I don't know, the climate action plan is the implementation of it is living, right? And so this is part of this is just to sort of cross-pollinate and gain more perspectives on how we can best implement the plan going forward. I mean, that could potentially look like having furthering the conversation around racial equity and climate justice and the just transition with actual communities of color and community of color-led organizations in the community, right, going forward. So in my view, there's always progress to be made on racial equity. And a part of this process would be figuring out how can we build that into the implementation of the plan further, right? So that's what I would say. I don't know if any of the other co-sponsors wanted to chime in on that. And then we'll take Shelby after that.
Yeah, I'm not a co-sponsor, but I 100% agree. The climate action plan that we have now in Bloomington is good, but there's probably room for improvement and probably room for other opinions, other people's, not opinions, but, a lot of research they've done. But I was going to add something about, so maybe one part of the conversation that we have with them, with the consultants, is that we tell them we already have a climate action plan and we need help analyzing it and figuring out where are we missing things, where can we improve, that kind of thing. Maybe that's the tangible outcome, is tying it directly to our current plan and making sure that it works for us.
Thank you, Alicia. I would second that. Najla or Jared, did you have any thoughts before we take Shelby's question?
I think you summed up my views pretty well. I think that this is a good opportunity for us to kind of learn from others from another community who have successfully done this. And I've been impressed with from what I've learned about these two folks that may be coming to speak, and I'm excited to potentially learn from them in our work to make Bloomington a better place and ensure that the climate action plan is as good as it can be. I mean, like Colin said, like I don't think any piece of legislation is ever 100% perfect, but it's like we're constantly trying to make things better. And I think that this is a huge step towards that. And I think that the addition of the third starred point here, I think kind of shows that, we are looking to use this as more than just a conversation, but as a conversation that leads to, tangible and material action on the climate action plan and on racial justice. So that's all I have to say.
Oh, and if I could just add one thing.
Go for it.
Yeah, sorry, Shelby. I was just gonna add that I think why I want to hear from the team that did the REIA is because they took the concept of climate resilience and combining that with social justice, and they made it a reality. And that's exactly what we're trying to do. The climate action plan is exactly that. It's focused on the climate, but it's going to take a lot more effort and a lot more people to get that implemented and manifested, if you will, in a way that includes social justice in our local community. And that's what we're here for as BCause. So that's why I want to hear from them, because they are one example. I don't know how many there are who have done this successfully, but we just happen to have a personal connection through Colin. And so I think I think it makes sense as a logical step for us to find out, just to be able to ask them best practices and any questions that we might have.
And I would just say, to piggyback on that really quick, I mean, we can see this as like us actually taking the first major step and trying to implement the racial equity aspect of the CAP. I think that's another way to see this particular proposal. Shelby, sorry for the delay.
No worries. So kind of summing up what I think everyone seems to be saying is that, like, this big goal of having these tangible actions, and the second portion of now this third thrown out option seems to be like workshop based. But I just didn't know, like, what is our ability just to focus all of it on workshop? Because if we're really hunting for these, these policies that we can do, like these real best practices, something that is tailored specifically to Bloomington, is it even an option for us to just full force go workshop? Because, I don't know exactly what the first part is, how presentation based is it? And then we're asking questions afterwards. But if we have the opportunity to use even full 4 hours of this is all workshop. This is us looking specifically at the current action plan or climate action plan. This is specific to Bloomington, and maybe there's a 30-minute or an hour shorter presentation. I didn't know what our flexibility was, or if that was something that, that pre-meeting that we would be having, if that's what we could talk about. Because it seems like the workshop and those goals that we're reaching isn't necessarily presentation, but it's what they can bring to the after effect of all of it.
Yeah, I think that's a solid point, Shelby. I figure the first session, I mean, because the proposal came from Maribel actually to do the 2 different sessions, or the sort of breakdown of it. The first session, I think, was maybe sort of to just give a background on like the consultant, the work that they've done, and like what worked, what didn't work in Oakland to get that passed. And maybe that could be like a way of sort of, I don't know, getting our creative juices flowing, in preparation for the second session. However, I mean, I feel like this is also just subject to modification as we see, like if we want to we want to end up doing 2 workshop sessions, which the commission might find to be a better, I guess, use of our time, if you will. I'm sure we could arrange that. I'm sure we could arrange that. I feel like, we could potentially approve this proposal today. Those of us who are interested in being on that working group to execute this project, when we meet with the consultant, we can sort of make sure we have very directed questions, get the insights we need, bring those back to BCOS and be like, okay, this is, maybe instead of just, instead of having the presentation and then the workshop, we can have 2 workshops on 2 different days instead. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like we could tweak this resolution even if we were to pass it today, going forward as we need it or as we saw fit.
Can I jump in with a question?
Oh yeah, I think I said your name, but I think I muted myself.
Sorry.
Go for it.
I'm just curious, this is obviously a BCOS led, but who do you see as other stakeholders that we might want to invite to these sessions? City workers or whoever?
Yeah, great question. I mean, so we listed a bunch of, local NGOs from the NAACP to Middle Way House to, the Neurodiversity Coalition at IU, in terms of, so basically a mix of public sector and NGOs with maybe a few businesses sprinkled in there, depending on how we'd like to proceed, but certainly like targeted at the county and the city, right? Because we especially want, because the REA is a public plan, right? It's the sort of analysis attached to the climate action plan for Oakland. So this is really oriented towards constituents and the representatives / city officials, right? City administrators. So there's a whole list here that you can check out that we kind of spitballed, including the Environmental Commission at the city and the county level, the Common Council, the Monroe County Board, and so on, the Human Rights Commission and so forth. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, thanks. It's hard for commissions to do things on their own, but it looks like this is a pretty well comprehensive list.
Joseph.
Yes, thank you. And I don't know if this would be a second round of comments from me, so I do want to at least provide the opportunity for anyone else who hasn't commented yet to do so. If there aren't any, I'll go ahead and ask, or I'll note first in response to the remark that you had made about potentially tweaking the resolution and massaging it in the future. At least I for one would be reluctant to vote for something with the intent that it's going to be changed. And my understanding of resolutions is that the intent is for them to be final and agreed upon as is. So I would expect that it would be in a final version before voting on it, unless it contains, such language that it would indicate what is and is not flexible in the future. But also to the previous remark about attendees, that's another important point for me is if this is, I know it's the hope for the aspiration that there will be other the NGOs involved in participating and being educated by it, and also potentially City of Bloomington staff or representatives. But is there any more understanding of interest within the community? Again, because it would be nice if this was just pro bono and valuable lessons to learn, but at the hourly rate that it has, I think it would be hard for me to justify just for the edification of BCOS, since we aren't actually given the authority to implement anything and can only give recommendations. Whereas if other members of the community, or particularly the city, were interested and present, I think there would be much more value to making sure that they receive the same information as well.
So I would push back on the idea that this commission doesn't have the authority to help implement the climate action plan. We are actually the explicit authority statutorily to be overseeing the implementation of the climate action plan. So it is one of our primary responsibilities. So I would push back on that. I would also say yeah, I've been extremely busy at graduate school and I haven't been able to reach out to stakeholders and to gauge interest and take responsibility for that. I feel like this is kind of, my sense is that this will be a compelling proposal to the administration, to some elements of the county, and to some local organizations as well. So that I would say that, and then I'll see the two Najla and then Jerry.
Oh, hi, thanks. Oh, yeah, I was just going to point out that I agree, Joseph, that we shouldn't be, spending valuable dollars willy-nilly on, consultants that we just want to hear from. And this list already includes the Department of Economic and Sustainable Development and the Common Council Climate Action Committee. And I believe the resolution also mentioned the office of the mayor. So I'm assuming that they would be invited. And I think if there's any other office you think should be represented there, that we could add that, Joseph.
Yeah, I would add, I agree with Joseph. I think maybe what we need is like a set list of who kind of has to be there, because it's true that we as this group does not have the ability to, make policy. So the people who make the policy should be there. So I agree. We probably need like a set list of people who have to be there. So like maybe the city council and the Department of Economic and Sustainable Development, maybe it's like 4.
Sure, that's a great point. So I think Lauren will probably be able to give us more insight. So Jarrett and then Lauren and then Christy.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, first of all, Joseph, I agree with your point that, like, I think that, like, part of the resolution process is coming to, like, a general agreement as a commission on, like, what our goal is for this event. But, like, it isn't specific in, what allotment of the time needs to be devoted to the presentation rather as opposed to workshopping. And so I think that's something that the working group can kind of play with more and still get away with that. And secondly, I think I agree. Like, I think it would be very cool for, 4 or all city council members to be there, the mayor to be there. But we don't really have the power to ensure that they're there. And it's really hard to get any sort of answer on whether they'll be present for something unless you have a date and something planned out. And so I think it's kind of a difficult conversation that we're having right now because it's hard to get commitments from people. Like, I've mentioned this to people in the community that, BCOS might be, helping facilitate this, and they're really interested, but I don't have a date to give them. I don't have really that much information about the event because we haven't finalized the plans for it yet and haven't then started the planning process and the process to get the funding anyway. So I think that it's kind of a tricky point where it is hard to finalize connections and know exactly who will be there, who's willing to help when we don't even have really a full timeline because the plan hasn't been finalized, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Jared. Lauren?
Yeah, I was wondering if the 4 hours versus 2 hours was complicating the decision. I mean, I think that I would feel comfortable making the recommendation that the funding is available for a 2-hour event, and then within the services agreement with the consultant, there's more detail. I think this resolution in particular, any of the items in that list of objectives could be served without having to edit the resolution. And then typically what would happen is if you guys made a recommendation on one of these, then I would work with that particular consultant to get their banking information, their W-9, et cetera. We'll figure out a services agreement with them. I can come back to you all and make sure that that's clarified well enough. So I think it's sort of like, do you want to have an event or not have an event? Otherwise, you can't start building partnerships. I would say a lot of the details as to what you would want to cover would probably best be allowed by some of these conversations with potentially NAACP, et cetera, and see what issues are of concern to them in order to inform the agenda and workshop, rather than reverse engineering it and saying, okay, what do we want them to present about? So there will be some, I think, conversations that need to happen with stakeholders to make sure that it's a useful event to them. But for my part, I feel comfortable probably approving anything except for option 3, just because that's sort of late breaking and I would need to figure out some financial commitments that are available. However, that doesn't preclude having a second session. It would just mean that we should probably bring a second resolution to approve that second session, so that because I was prepared for about $1,000 and I've already asked for that, but either I would have to ask my department tomorrow and that would push it to the next meeting, which would be perhaps an unnecessary delay since the working group wouldn't be able to continue with this. So anyway, I don't know if that's helpful, but
that's very helpful. Thanks for the insight, Lauren. Christy.
Yeah, just a few kind of notes in response to what's been said. First, I know that this has been a big effort and you've worked on this for this point like many months. So I really do appreciate the work you're putting into this. And I know that it can be like a slow slog to kind of combine all these ideas into a document. So thank you for this work. And this is kind of related to these conversations around the content of this document, the timing and the budget. So let's see, starting with like timing, I feel like looking at the emails that were going back and forth, they made a reference to like wanting to do this like then almost maybe the next meeting in November. Maybe I misread that. And so I think unless we are able to like approve this resolution and confirm things quickly, I would suspect that that probably isn't feasible in terms of like the cross promotion that we need to do with other institutions.
Can I directly respond to that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that meeting was actually just to chat about, to develop sort of the interactive component of this further. And yeah, so that's what I would say.
Okay, that's helpful. Okay. And in that case, and then just thinking about like when it would actually be, honestly, I don't know if this is pushing things too far back and, we haven't approved this yet, but like, I feel like, in this Judeo-Christian society, like between Thanksgiving, Christmas is just not a good time to book things like this in my perception. So we might want to think early 2022. With respect to, and so on the note of that timeline, kind of like that chicken or egg, like do we pick a date and then market it with people that we want to be there? Or do we ask people their availability? I think in some ways we just kind of pick a date that's far enough in the future that gives us enough time to ramp up and kind of cross promote. And then the budget actually, like if we have $1,000 and we go with option 2, but the budget like numbers really didn't surprise me. I mean, in my own experiences working with speakers, especially subject matter experts like these that have a lot of expertise and their livelihood is dependent on like their ability to share their knowledge and expertise, like that, these numbers are very fair from what I've seen in other places. But if we have $1,000, we just go with option 2. But I do want to be respectful of like not having too many meetings with them or asking them to do so much prep work. Like because like what they were saying in that email from what I perceived was like, if we're presenting for X amount of time, it usually takes us X amount of time to do prep work. So we just want to be like careful to respect their times in terms of like lead-in meetings and all those sorts of things. And then just kind of on the note of the content of this document, I almost wonder, if we almost want to get a little bit more big with this so that instead of saying, we might say something like, plan in relationship with these folks for a budget, for a maximum budget of up to $1,000 without having to get into like this nitty gritty of like number of hours so that like we just don't exceed a certain cost or something. Just an idea. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Christy. Just to clarify one thing, we did push the timeline back to February or March 2022. Yeah, because end of this year was going to be just a mess, I think. I think, Lauren, you were about to speak.
Yeah, I was going to say, if it was not to exceed 1,000, can do an addendum at the next meeting if I had the opportunity to check if it could be 2,000. It just happened like 2 hours before the meeting, so I need to go look at the budget.
Great, and I mean that might be ideal, I think, Lauren. So if we were to approve this today, we would be meeting with the consultants on November 2nd. So I believe 1 or 2 weeks before our November meeting. So we would have ample time to kind of get those insights and come back to the commission and, flesh things out further, if you will, or just inform the commission like this is maybe like an appropriate addendum to the resolution as needed. So, any other thoughts on this proposal? And Christy, if you just one last thing on that, if you did have like specific, I don't know, if you wanted to like suggest changes maybe in the directly in the document, that would be really cool. That'd be helpful because I want to honor your input there. Here's a link to it. Any other thoughts? Okay, maybe since Christy, do you plan on maybe suggesting some changes here? If so, we can give it a few minutes before we take further action.
Oh no, sorry. If I don't want to like up in the process, so if the group wants to vote on this, I can be ready to vote too. But I was more so I think in response to Joseph's comment where he was curious about like to what degree things were going to change, and then someone said something about like what number are we voting on. So I was just trying to see if having the different options was somehow confusing, that we just say at this point we're saying up to and not exceeding $1,000. But I don't want to like, if it's in a place that we feel like we can vote on it, I can do that too.
Okay. Well, I guess I will make a motion to adopt. And I want to be clear that I'm going to make a motion to adopt option 2, so not $2,000, but $1,000 or 2 hours for both consultants total. Because as Christy mentioned, they did mention that prep time will probably be needed. I foresee maybe us making an addendum and budgeting more money down the line for that prep work. But for now, definitely, option 2 would give us at least, an hour's worth presentation, even if we were not to budget further time. So, yeah, I guess I will make a motion to adopt that.
I'll second the motion.
Jared, did you want to manage this?
Yeah, I can do this. Okay, so similar to how we did with the agenda earlier, I'm just going to call your name, and when I say your name, unmute, and you indicate if you vote yes, you can say yes or I or whatever you choose that indicates that no, nay, or you can abstain. So
sorry, Jared, should I read the results before we vote? Is that necessary, or?
I don't think that's a requirement. If you want to, since you made the motion, like feel free, but I don't think that's required.
Okay, that's fine. I know in other spaces it is, so I just wanted to check.
Okay. Alrighty. Anna?
I vote yes.
Alrighty. Jarrett votes yes as well. Christy?
Yes.
Alrighty. Alicia?
Yes.
Nolan?
Yes.
Jonna?
Yes.
Colin?
Yes.
Shelby?
Yes.
Najla?
Yes.
And Joseph?
No.
Alrighty. Let me get the count on that really quick. Alrighty, so the vote was 9-1 to 0. So the proposal does pass. And yeah, Colin?
I just wanted to make sure before we maybe conclude this topic, could we maybe have a brief discussion about who would like to be on the working group to kind of pull this thing off and meet with the consultant?
I can help out.
Thank you, Alicia. So that's one. Jared?
Yeah, I can help too.
Let me just note this.
I can help as well.
Brilliant, thank you all. Any other takers on this project? Thanks all.
Alrighty. So now we will move on to our next old business item, which is plastic-free resolution. Was that from Jana or from somebody else?
Well, I had presented, this is Jonna, I had presented some various information about possible plastic-free ordinances modeled on a Florida model. And we were going to do some research and kind of circle back to it. Basically, what I'd say is I don't think we're ready to decide on anything today, unless other people have research or information they'd like to contribute. So maybe move that to next month.
Okay. Does anybody have anything they want to say on the subject tonight, or is everybody kind of on board with waiting until November to talk about that? And we can also email too if you find stuff between now and then, because I know our November meeting is going to be a little bit fuller than normal. Alrighty, seeing nobody with their hand raised at the moment, we will move on to the next item. So before we leave old business, does anybody have any other old business items that they would like to bring up? Alrighty, seeing no hands, we will move into new business. And on the agenda tonight, there was actually no new business items listed. So unless somebody has some new business that they would like to bring up that wasn't on the agenda, we will move on. So anybody have new business?
Oh, I wanted to update because on our visit to the Common Council. Is that old business?
I think that's fine to do now. I talked about it a little bit during the report from chair, but you weren't here.
Oh, okay. Oh, so you already did that then?
Yeah, but I gave Colin a chance to comment during that period. So if you want to quickly talk about that, that's old. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So in the policy working group, we met and we decided the best way to speak to the policy recommendation at this time would be to comment on the budget. And so Colin, Jarrett, Jonna, and I all attended the Common Council one of the Common Council sessions where they discussed the budget. And we all spoke as members of the public, and we simply read the Housing First resolution. And then I shared comments to the effect that we recommend that they vote no on the overall budget because it does not adequately address our Housing First resolution, while recommending increased policing funds, which have been shown to actually harm communities rather than increase the actual safety in them. So that's what we did, and it seemed to be very well received and very. We thought it seemed to be very well received anyway. The council members are well, first of all, Matt, I don't think he's here tonight. Matt Flaherty, our council member, he also echoed our concerns, and several other council members said that they were moved by our remarks to reconsider their positions on that issue. So we thought it was very well received, and yeah, so thanks for everyone for your work on that resolution. And hopefully we can keep helping move the housing crisis forward here in Bloomington.
Thanks for that, Rachel. Does anybody have any questions or comments, I guess, while we're on that topic? Okay, seeing none, we will move to working group updates. Oh, Joseph, sorry.
If I may, Jared, I know I was late. I appreciate that. I just wanted to say thank you to those who showed up at the budget meeting. I think it was, yeah, good to be represented there and to represent the Commission on Sustainability. So thank you for doing that.
Thanks. Okay, so then we will move to working group updates. So we'll start with the Just Transition Working Group. Since we just voted on the proposal, I don't know if there is a major update other than that, but I'll let others talk. If anyone has anything.
Alicia, did you want to give it a shot, or Jonna?
No, well, we had advanced to the point where we had divided up the different categories and assigned ourselves to them, but I don't know if you covered that previously. That's where we had gotten to. And then we're going to circle back. We are reviewing the Climate Action Plan and the Sustainability Action Plan, among other things. So.
Yeah, I think another thing we wanted to do was come up with like a maybe some questions for this group of who we could reach out to, because part of our project is doing research in our community. So I think the next steps will be to try to use this group, this larger group, to kind of try to find the right people to bring in to talk to.
You have a next meeting date that you could announce to come if they wanted to?
Thank you, Lauren. Yeah, our next meeting is next Tuesday, the 19th of October at 7 p.m. Everyone is welcome.
Awesome. Alrighty, and then I believe last meeting, our discussion on the waste reduction working group was kind of cut short by a time constraint. So I know there were some sentiments of possibly bringing that working group back. So if anybody wants to speak to that, just raise your hand and we can have a discussion on that. Yeah, Joseph.
Yes, I do just want to note that I don't want to kick dead horses, but I am available and interested in having the working group being active if there's other interests, and didn't bring it up only because I thought I'd leave it to other commissioners to see if there was interest to do so.
Yeah, Shelby.
Yeah, I think I had originally also expressed interest for that working group. So if we decide to go ahead and go through with it, I would still continue that interest.
Awesome. And Jonna?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that it would probably be a natural place for the plastics issue, the plastics ordinance that I had brought in front of the commission last time. So I would be interested in joining the group. I did want to say that I don't think we had decided as a commission that we wanted to have a plastics ordinance. So voting on whether we're interested in that would probably be the first step. It had just started with a presentation of some options, and that's all I wanted to add.
Awesome. And Nolan?
Yeah, I think Jonna answered a little bit of what I was going to ask, but what is the goal of the waste reduction working group? Is that a city or I get, yeah, what does that group propose to do?
Yeah, so it was an existing working group that we decided to end several months ago due to lack of interest from the group. But then in recent months, it's kind of resurged as an item that several commissioners are interested in. Joseph, if you want to talk about the goals of that previous commission, I know that you were kind of the lead person on that.
Yeah, I'll start by saying that the working group is, I would say, exclusively as its name suggests, and then within that, the members will determine what to focus on. But last year's activities consisted of apartment outreach and survey in order to learn about waste management providers and hurdles, which I know is something that ESD is actually talking about doing and even mentioned in the budget presentation to City Council in August. And then another activity that was being done at the time was outreach to local restaurants in terms of material sourcing. Mostly the survey that was being done was just to determine the recyclability of materials, but could be extended to learning about distributors and opportunities for reduction of waste materials in packaging in the food service industry, which just happens to be one of the large sources of waste materials. Does that answer your question sufficiently?
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Joseph. Anna?
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in real quick. I agree with Jonna's statement earlier. I think it makes the most sense. I think what we have seen in this commission, if I may just share this thought, is that there are working groups that are just kind of formed over very large ideas. And I think it makes more sense for working groups to be formed around key projects that the whole group votes on. So I think it would make sense to reconvene this group if there was a very specific, tangible project that, that the group could work on and kind of bring back to the larger commission. But otherwise, I think just general waste reduction is a really large issue. So I think just having something that the whole commission is behind would make sense if it were to reconvene. That's all.
Thank you for the comment. Najla?
Thank you. I wanted to say that I'm interested also in the topic, but I don't know how much time I have to devote to another working group since I'm already involved with two. And can you guys can still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And so that's it. I just wanted to say I'm interested in the topic, particularly the supply chain aspect. I think it's vital to our community. I think it's a great service that our commission could provide. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as Najla. This is 100% an important topic, but time is limited. But someday when there's more time, I will be there.
All right, Joseph.
Yeah, I wanted to say thank you to Anna for the remark, and then to follow up on it, if there are any specific topics that the commission wants to focus on, I'm open to working or managing the working group either way, whether it be something that is short-term and narrow focus and then lives through the duration of that project and then is voted on and off accordingly, or if it's something that stays broad and then the participants within it explicitly define what it is that they're working on and take feedback from the commission as it goes along, which would also provide a measure of flexibility just in the naming of the working group if we didn't want to change it for each specific project. So I would open up to discussion on more thoughts, as Najla just suggested. Supply chain is a point of interest, but if there are other topics within the commission, I'll note that my waste reduction focus decisions are based on the Kessler report that was published in 2016 that did a waste analysis on the Monroe County and offered suggestions on biggest opportunities, as well as exchanges I've had with different members of the city departments, ESD and Department of Public Works, which houses sanitation, and their recommendations based on their experience within waste management within the city limits.
Awesome. Colin?
Yeah, really quickly, I wanted to just mention that expanding composting and reducing single-use anything, whether it's plastic, compostable plastic, and so forth, is something that I'm really, really interested in. And if, like others have said, I don't have the capacity, but it's something I would totally get behind. So both of those topics especially.
Yeah, and really early on, like I think probably around 2 years ago at this point, the waste reduction working group was focused on composting. So there might be some resources that have already been assembled in the Google Drive somewhere around composting. And I remember I was specifically in contact with people from Iowa City, somebody that works in the city government there, their director of recycling, who was also in charge of their compost program, getting data from them on what a similar sized city with a college population, what their composting program looked like for them, so that we could see how it could look for Bloomington. So that's something that there might be resources already there. Colin, is your hand raised again? Okay. Yeah, Joseph.
Oops, sorry, all that being heard, I will move that we establish a waste reduction working group wherein the members of the working group will define specific goals and report to the commission on those goals periodically.
Alrighty, we have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Awesome. So we will go through the roll call, and whenever I call your name, please unmute and indicate how you want to vote on this. Alrighty, Anna.
I abstain.
Okay, Jarrett votes yes. Christy.
Yes.
Alicia.
Yes.
Nolan.
Yes.
Jonna.
Yes.
Colin.
Yes.
Shelby.
Yes.
Najla.
Yes.
And Joseph.
Yes.
Alrighty, so the waste reduction working group is alive again. And yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing what y'all come up with in regards to your projects. I think that's kind of worked out well for the Just Transition working group, kind of meeting after being established, coming up with kind of some goals and then bringing it back to us. So I'm excited to see what you all come up with. And yeah, does anybody have any further comments on this topic? Yeah, Joseph.
I would just like to confirm that the interested members are Jana and Shelby, and anyone else can correct me if I'm mistaken or missed anyone. All right, good, thank you.
Okay, and then that is the last item on our agenda. Oh no, I guess we need a policy working group update, which has kind of already been given. We presented at the city council meeting.
Yes,
Najla.
sorry, that's what I gave earlier. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, cool. Just wanted to make sure we didn't miss anything. Alrighty, so that's kind of all we have on the agenda. Before we adjourn, does anybody else have any comments they want to make? Anything they want to say?
Actually, I have one quick question for Lauren. Do you have any sense of in the future when I'm torn because I love the accessibility and convenience of Zoom meetings, but I just find that I'm getting like Zoom fatigue throughout the week. And I was just curious, and I would love to just like build community with fellow commissioners and like see them in person. And so I was just curious, like if there's any timeline for, I know that it's really dependent on, more importantly, the pandemic and the threat to public health, but I'm curious if like there's been any conversations about when we might have in-person meetings.
Yeah, so we're preparing to be hybrid. We have all the conference rooms ready for that, ordered things called owls so that you can do in person and online at the same time. It's been the organizational policy that as long as the emergency order is extended, so will the virtual meeting. So I can't answer that, but I do know that this week I'm going to be working it out. So at the moment that that's decided, I'll be ready to have the technology to prepare for people to be split as needed based on what people are comfortable with. So I'll keep you updated. I'm sorry I don't have a ton more information than that, but I did want to be ready so that we're not scrambling with trying to manage picking up the audio from the tables, which need to be in a certain formation, and then also getting the cats and everything else broadcast. So I think that I don't know that there's, I mean, the county I think is still virtual as well, but I'll give you as much notice as I have, because legally we'll have to have as many people, we'll have to have quorum in person, so.
Nolan?
I think Lauren just said what I was going to say, but yeah, there has to be a certain number of people physical in the group, and not all, we can't all just say virtual because we want to.
Colin?
I had just one announcement to help close out, which is that the UN Climate Change Conference, COP26, is taking place at the end of this month through, I think, early November. And I'm going to drop quickly in the chat the link to the conference, the official one, and the link also to a People's Summit for Climate Justice, which is happening from the 7th to the 10th of November, sort of the alternate climate change conference for social movement, civil society, etc.
Awesome. And it sounds like that will coincide with our next meeting, which I'll just give a reminder is November 9th at 6 p.m. And as Lauren said, we'll be anxiously awaiting her email to see whether it is online or hybrid in person. And if it does switch over to be hybrid, as soon as Lauren sends that email out, I'll send an email to trying to coordinate like a general idea of who thinks they're going to be able to be there in person, who thinks they're going to have to be on Zoom for that meeting, so that we can kind of, we aren't caught surprised. If, I show up at City Hall and there's one other person there, we're not, surprised by that. So
You'll have 2 weeks notice minimum. So
okay.
These emergency orders have been extended right at the last minute because they only have 30-day viability. So like right when it's the 28th or the 31st is when the next one will. So we're at 19 at this point. I don't. The mask order is extended until the end of the month, but we'll just see.
Alrighty, Colin.
Sorry.
Your hand is just over. Okay, Najla.
Is there a requirement, sorry, I lost my train of thought. What were we just discussing?
The hybrid meetings. So the requirement is that.
Yeah, sorry. Is there a requirement for quorum so that we know how many of us need to attend in person for us to be able to vote?
Yes. So we need a quorum to be present in person, is my understanding.
Yeah, and I'll resend that too. When I was on my honeymoon, you passed a resolution for hybrid meetings this summer. So it's been a couple of months. We were hoping that things would shift, but then they got bad again. So
that means the people who attended on Zoom couldn't vote in the meeting?
No, they can vote. It just, there has to be a quorum of members present in person to just like to meet the orders of the regulations of the hybrid meeting, to be like for us to be able to vote, like the online.
So we would just have to end the meeting if there wasn't enough people there. We would have to end the meeting and go home.
We wouldn't have to end the meeting and go home. We just couldn't vote on anything. So yeah, okay. Nolan.
Thank you.
Yeah, I might have gotten this idea from this commission, I forgot, but we in the Monroe County Environmental Commission have a Google sheet set up so we can know in advance who's going to be in person, who's not. So
that's a good idea. Yeah, I can definitely set one of those up if/when needed and get that sent out. That's a great idea. Thank you. I feel like I was going to say something else. Oh, and I believe that the way that we've been treating our quorum right now is smaller than it normally would be because we have 3 vacancies. So it might be easier to meet quorum in person. Well, I don't know, easier because we have fewer members, but yeah, and Matt's not here, so he can't give us a timeline on when we'll be getting any new appointees, but
I think all of them that are remaining.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say all of them that are remaining openings are the mayor's office, so I just need to.
Oh, okay. And do we know anything about the IU vacancy? Have we heard anything about that?
I have a standing meeting with IU Office of Sustainability in the morning, so I'll just ask them what their plan is.
Sounds good. Alrighty, if nobody else has anything that they want to bring up, Going once, going twice, sold. Alrighty, I'm gonna adjourn this meeting officially. Hope you all have a great rest of your night. Take care and always email if you have any questions or concerns.